welcome to Otaku No Video. As always, thanks so much for joining me. Today a primer on an anime legend, Yoshiyuki Tomino. This man has been doing anime since, well, the first anime, and that's what we're going to talk about in a second. Now this is the first part of 3. Yes, he's done that much stuff. First part is basically pre-Gundam, and then Gundam and post-Gundam. And yes, we got a lot to talk about even before Gundam. Because Tezuka first got his start on the first anime, Astro Boy. That's right, back in the early 60s, Tomino was brought on by Tezuka to work on Astro Boy. Tomino did writing as well as storyboard work on Astro Boy. Now, Mushi Productions, who made Astro Boy, went through a fair amount of labor difficulties. Folks weren't too crazy about the way Tezuka ran his studio. So a lot of the workers ended up leaving and forming a new animation studio called Sunrise. And Tomino ended up leaving and joining them as well. Now Sunrise is still around, and Tomino is still working there. I mean, that's where he's been ever since, for, gosh, 40 years now? And his first work at Sunrise as an actual director was an anime called Triton of the Sea, made in 1972, so about 10 years after Astro Boy came out. And ironically, it's an adaptation of an Astro Boy story. And tells the story of two warring factions and a boy caught in the middle who's fighting for one side. The other side is evil, this side is good. Although in classic Tomino tradition, and actually classic Tezuka tradition, the evil side isn't quite as evil as it seems, the good side isn't quite as good as it seems. So there's some interesting twists there, especially for a kid's show like that. A couple of years later, Tomino moved on to mecha, and he made Brave Raideen. This is considered the first mecha show. Also the first mecha show in which the mecha was shown as this powerful and mysterious artifact. It's this big giant robot, and it's this weird thing that folks have to pilot. Now there were certainly, robots before. This is the first real mecha thing. And this idea of the mecha as a ancient powerful artifact would then be, let's just say, repurposed a number of times throughout history. Evangelion. From that point, he moved on to a show called Zambot 3 a couple years later. Now, I have a lot to say about Zambot 3 because I've seen a fair chunk of it. Zambot 3 starts off as a kid show. It's a kid mecha show. There are 3 robots. Three kids pilot these 3 robots, and they all combine into one big super robot, Zambot 3, which then fights these nasty aliens that are trying to take over the world. And then about halfway through, it gets really serious. Like people die, not just like main characters and not just like heroically, just like folks start getting blown up by the bad guys and things get really, really serious. And like by the end, most of humanity is dead. It's that kind of a show, and it just kind of comes out of nowhere. Now, this anime is considered by many to be the start of Tomino's nickname, Kill 'Em All Tomino. He doesn't do this with every show, but there are certainly a number of his shows where most of the folks die at the end, which is definitely different. And to be fair, I mean, this is something that was rare in anime and manga up to that point. You just didn't kill off all your characters partway through. Then in 1979, he made a little show called Mobile Suit Gundam. Now, we're not going to talk too much about this here because it's part 2. But the thing to note here, and the reason why I still got 4 more titles to talk about, is that Mobile Suit Gundam wasn't very popular when it first came out. It was a big hit among certain otaku. Of course, otaku barely existed back then, at least the way they are today. But it didn't get very big ratings at all, in fact, very small ratings. It got canceled partway through, heck. And it wasn't until the compilation movies came out, and after that, the things spun up a couple of years later. So Tomino went straight from Gundam to a show called Space Runaway, Ideon. Now, in Ideon, he went back to his Kill 'Em All Tomino mold. In fact, depending on how you look at it, literally all of humanity is dead at the end of Ideon. Now, it depends on how you... I mean, there's stuff going on. It's kind of like Evangelion. But, there's a lot of death. And it's a serious, dramatic... I've seen Ideon all the way through, and the 2 movies. Serious, dramatic... and this is actually a show that the creators of Evangelion said that was a major inspiration for them for Evangelion. Just to give you an idea, the TV show follows these characters and this ancient, giant robot thing that's trying to that has this massive internal power. And then at the end of the TV show, he made a compilation movie and then a movie with a new ending that sort of reanimates the ending. Sounds familiar. And so Ideon's dark. It is very, very dark. You also see a lot of character similarities to Evangelion. But anyway, from there he moved on to a show called Zabungle. Now Zabungle moved back to his more goofy, lighthearted style for things. Zabungle has just sort of fun main characters. It's very light. And this has the infamous scene, which I'm pretty sure you can find on YouTube. It was there a while ago, of the main character in his mecha actually catches a nuclear intercontinental ballistic missile and then throws it back at the bad guys. If you've seen Gurren Lagann, Zabungle is the kind of show that they're kind of referencing in that. That's kind of where they're coming from. So that was Zabungle. Again, not sort of Kill 'Em All Tomino show. But then he made, a year later in '83, Aura Battler Dunbine. Now, the interesting thing about that one, besides being a lot of death, is that it's a fantasy series. The mecha are actually biomechanical. They are giant suits of armor that are magical that folks climb into and pilot. And it's also one of Tomino's more complex shows. He was now moving into the area where he had a lot of characters all interacting all on multiple sides of a conflict. In shows like Zambot 3, it was humans versus aliens. Very simple. By the time of Ideon and Dunbine, you got there are multiple factions going on. In Ideon, you had some aliens who want to destroy the humans, some who want peace. So Dunbine is definitely moving into that territory. And by this time, Gundam had gained in popularity enough, and in fact, Zeta Gundam had come out, or was coming out at the same time, that folks were now interested in who Tomino was. And as a major director, he was really getting a lot of attention. I mean, folks knew who he was before, but now he was a really major force. So Dunbine got a lot of popularity out of that. Then the next thing he did was Heavy Metal L Game. This is the last thing he did before most of his Gundam work. And I haven't seen any of L Game at all. That came out in '84, but that's, I believe, more of a serious mecha series. And at that point, Gundam was doing so well that he basically transitioned from there back to the Gundam franchise and did a number of Gundam series, which I'll talk about in part 2 of this video series.